finishes and factions catching action.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another episode of Finishes and Factions Does NXT. This week we are from the Performance Center as normal, and it is just me this week. So, without further ado, let's get into NXT. To start the episode off this week, we had an in-ring promo between Ava and Stephanie Baker, basically saying that after last week's episode of NXT, where Stephanie defended her both her NXT title and her Women's North American Championship in the same show, and retaining both of them, that she has shown everyone why she's the number one in the women's division. And they've come to the tough decision between Ava and Stephanie Baker that Stephanie is going to relinquish her North American title, and at Stand and Deliver, a new champion will be decided for that title in a 6-woman ladder match. The qualifiers for that start tonight. We have 2 matches for those. We'll get into them a little bit as we go. This week was mainly filler, to be fair, just finishing off some storylines, adding a few extra bits in that needed to be there, and kind of carrying on towards Stand and Deliver in from the point I'm recording this 2 weeks' time, or just under 2 weeks' time. So Stephanie Baker says that she knows it's not a popular decision because the reaction from the crowd in the Performance Center was very, very loud and booey for the announcement. And she basically just says, look, I know it's not popular, but NXT's given me a lot of opportunities, and she wants to do the same for everyone else. And she doesn't want to hold the division back. She wants to push it. And to do that, she's going to give, another wrestler an opportunity to take on this North American title and carry it around as theirs. On the condition that she gets to choose her opponent for Stand and Deliver. So, for those of you who are not aware, Stand and Deliver is basically NXT's version of WrestleMania. And so from now over the next, well, we've got 2 episodes left, I think. Possibly only 1 episode. I'm not 100% sure. Do not quote me on that one. To kind of work out who her opponent for Stand and Deliver is going to be. At which point we get the Juggernaut, Jordan Grace, come out and basically say that, after she dealt with Jada Parker last week and she's out the window, it's her time to have a crack at that NXT title in Las Vegas for Stand and Deliver. And it basically, we then get Jada Parker coming out saying that if Jordan Grace had kept her ass on the floor where it should have been, it would have been Jada Parker would have been holding that title rather than Stephanie Baker, and Stephanie knows it. But, it's going to be one of those things. Jordan says that Jada Parker had her shot, she fumbled it, and she basically may not know how championships work as she's never had one. And that she basically needs to go to the back and restart from the beginning. We then end up getting a point where Stephanie Baker says that they need to work it out. And we then get a little bit of a brawl from Jordan Grace and Jada Parker, with security coming in. And we have it basically finishing with Jordan Grace tossing a security member over the top rope as though he was just an empty water bottle that she'd taken into the ring with her. And basically works out that, so from this promo, we have a series of matches building up to a 6-woman ladder match at Stand and Deliver, and both Jordan Grace and Jada Parker feel that it should be them. We do then go into Adam calls them a social media promo. And it's kind of pretty much, and it's all about Trick Williams saying that he challenged Obafemi to a match at Stand and Deliver, and he hasn't heard anything back yet. Where we then cut into Obafemi being interviewed in the car park, And he basically responds saying that Trick Williams isn't the champion, over Femi is, and he doesn't answer to Trick Williams, and he'll and Trick Williams will basically find out tonight why you don't call out the ruler, and we then go to a section of into the backstage where we get reactions to the news that we heard at the start of the evening about Stephanie Baker relinquishing her title. And basically, all hell breaks loose backstage verbally, and Fallon Henley seems to be getting it worse. There is a large group of women in the backstage, and they are all just insulting each other to the point. And Fallon Henley gets pretty much the worst of it. That brings us into our first match of the evening, which is the first of the women's qualifier matches for that 6-woman ladder match in Las Vegas. And this first one, we get Zarya versus Lash Legend. So Zarya is accompanied to the ring, by her tag partner Sol Ruka, and Lash Legend comes to the ring with her tag team partner Jakara Jackson, part of the Meta-4. So this is, like I said, the first of the qualifying matches for that 6-woman tag match. And to be fair, this match, when it came to it, I was quite impressed by. Both Zarya and Lash Legend are both very strong, powerful women. And it kind of, we got a showcase here of what strong wrestlers can do sort of within these matches, especially the women's division. And both of these guys in ring and the guys on the outside of with their tag teams have both had a decent run recently. So at the start of this, both women are basically trying to power each other out, trying to push the other one back and forth. There's a little bit of a here and there, a little bit of turnaround, a little bit of catch, a little bit of just trying to get to know each other a little bit and just kind of get themselves loose, I suppose. The first opportunity we had for a count was Lash Legend. She managed to pick up a 2 count off a suplex. And at one point within this series, Zarya tried to go for that Hurricane Rana. She can't quite get the end off, and which didn't really help, but she did manage to get a pretty good slap off afterwards, and they go to trading pretty much in the middle of the ring. Now, for these guys, I wasn't 100% sure what we were going to get. They're both in tag teams. They're both doing well in their tag division. Neither of them are holding gold at the moment. But, the fact they've given these guys a bit of an incentive with a singles run with this tournament is actually going to be quite interesting. Do I think that either of the women in this ring at the moment have the ability to go on and win it? Yes. I personally would like to see Zarya do very well in this, purely just for the fact that I've really started to enjoy the way she wrestles recently. And her moveset's quite impressive as well, to be fair. At one point, she manages to lock in a front face lock, and Lash Legend has to basically use her movement to break this one up. And we sort of, at one point, a little bit later on, Lash Legend goes to throw Zarya out of the ring. Zarya manages to counter this into a roll-up 2 count. And then Lash Legend manages to get a slam in and goes for an elbow drop and misses it, as does Zarya on her next section of moves. We got to see a few impressive bits in this. Lash Legend with a kip up. I do not care what wrestler it is. A kip up is always impressive in my eyes, purely for the fact that I'm too fat to do one, and I think even if I tried, I would probably break something, whether that be on me or within the surrounding area. Kind of think of Rikishi trying to do the worm, and that's what it would look like if I was trying to do a kip up. So this one ultimately finishes with Zarya winning. I mean, there was a few bits that led up to that were quite interesting. Lash Legend caught Zarya on a crossbody attempt and manages to hit her with a backbreaker. She then attempts a power bomb opportunity, which gets reversed by Zarya. She then has an opportunity to pull off that head scissors, hits the pump kick afterwards, and then on the return from the pump kick, finishes with a German suplex. We've got a selection of spears or attempted spears from Zarya. Lash Legend actually manages to pull off a choke slam on Zarya for a 2 count. Now, bearing in mind, like I've said previously, these women are both very tall, very stocky, muscular women. So that choke slam, I was quite impressed to see it go off. To be fair, but like I said, at the end, Zarya qualified for the ladder match at Stand and Deliver with basically what was just a slam and a count. I think these two put enough damage across each other for it to be, you could tell by the end of it, they were both pretty hurting. And I'm not going to lie, I think I would be if I'd have taken some of the moves that those women did in that match. We then end up going into a backstage segment with Josh Briggs and Inamura. I can't remember. I want to say it's Yasuki Inamura, but I think I'm wrong with that one. Basically talking about going to Stand and Deliver and the match that they're going to try and get themselves there, when Wesley basically says, don't bother, boys. I've won a match at Stand and Deliver, and trust me, you boys do not have what it takes. Inamura then starts going off about how Wesley used to fight with honor, and everything he did was quite honorable, and he no longer does that, and he thinks that he is going to teach Wesley how to fight with honor again, and he wants a match. Now, there was a little bit I spotted here. Both Briggs and Inamura were wearing what looks like biker cuts, something very similar to what the Aces and Eights from TNA were wearing a few years ago when they were doing that storyline. There wasn't a lot of patches, but there was a few in the right place that suggested it made it an MC style thing, but you don't get to see the back of it to be able to see what else is there. I mean, it could have a new gimmick change, possibly. I don't know why they'd want to, but it's one of those. While we are backstage, we see Kalani Jordan backstage after talking with Ava, saying that she wants to repeat history in Vegas, as she was the first women's North American champion, and she wants to become the first person to hold that title twice. Because out of the holders that have had it since it's been brought in, you've had Kalani Jordan, Fallon Henley, and Stephanie Baker. So it's been held by 3 people. None of them have held it twice, and Kalani Jordan thinks that she's going to be the woman to do that one. At which point we get Roxanne Perez coming in saying, actually, that's not the case. She'll be taking it because she wants to become the first Grand Slam holder in NXT. And Kalani Jordan basically says, look, I will beat you for the chance. And Ava hears that, gets a slight little smile on her face and goes, well, actually, funny you two say that, because you guys are going one-on-one for a spot in that ladder match. It Stand and Deliver to join Zarya. So that was definitely an interesting one. That means that later on this evening, we are going to see Roxanne Perez versus Kalani Jordan, which on paper I think is going to be a really good match. After watching it, we'll get into it a little bit later down the line, but was still actually a very enjoyable match. We then, I mean, I'm finding this difficult doing this on my own, guys. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm used to having Adam to talk to Adam is not currently with us this week. As I said, it is just me. And yeah, we're going to carry on. We go into a VT promo with Tony D'Angelo and the D'Angelo family, where basically Tony set the D'Angelos a little bit of a challenge, trying to get some information on Dark State, which is now the name that the four masked amigos that have been running wild on NXT have brought in with themselves. So they basically give us the four names of the people that are in Dark State and a little bit of their background. If you get an opportunity to go back and watch this promo, I would, because I'm not, without quoting it word for word, which I'm not going to be doing because I noted form, I took notes on it. There is some really interesting parts in this promo. So, Masked Amigo number 1, we know as Dion Lennox. We've known this one for a little while. We just knew very little about him, and Google said that he was a linebacker as a professional footballer for the American Football League. So we find out now that he used to be a linebacker for Oregon State University, and we are informed that he's a mouthy hothead who once attacked a teammate in the locker room. That's not necessarily a good thing. The next one, Osiris Griffin, former a defensive lineman from Syracuse. Again, an NCAA team. Apparently, this gentleman broke or hurt his own quarterback's ribs in an incident on field, but he does have some great instincts. We are then told the third gentleman is a name by the name of Cutler James. He was a high-level wrestler, an All-American, and this guy basically has unlimited stamina and likes to take part in Spartan races. Now, I was not 100% sure what a Spartan race was, but I did find out that they do a few different ones, and it is basically just an endurance race. But they do not look like your standard endurance races at all. These look absolutely mental and not something I think I would be able to do at this moment. But looking at these, you know what, I might have a little go and trying to see what one of these is like maybe next year with a bit of training. Definitely need a bit of training first. He's described as a bit of a wannabe John Wick. Now, if you have the movement that John Wick has in a wrestling ring, goddamn, that is dangerous. And the final guy that we are introduced to that is a member of Dark State is a gentleman by the name of Saquon Sugars. He was a high school wrestler who is now who turned basically into a street fighter. But he's not the dumb thug you think he is. This gentleman turned down Harvard, but we don't know why. So, after finding out a lot of this, Tony D'Angelo says that they're going to have to go after them and basically tells Stax that the last time he made a plan, it didn't work out so well, so Stax is going to have to trust Tony. And Stax is pretty much like, I've got you, boss. You know, you're the boss, I'm the underboss, I'll do what you say. I've got this. Now this next bit, I'm not going to lie, was actually quite funny. And I don't know why I found it quite funny, but we kind of zoom into another backstage segment. A lot of this week's matches, or a lot of this week's episode, it was a lot of filler. I've said this, I'll probably say it a few more times in the next 20 minutes, half an hour. But it was an awful lot of filler. And we got to see Hank and Tank wearing Pretty Deadly's costumes. Only the top half of those, basically just enough to cover the arms and the top chest plate. But if you can imagine these two boys in a very sparkling, sequenced outfit, yeah, it was pretty much there. We also got to see Pretty Deadly. They made an NXT appearance. Basically, Pretty Deadly, like, they love it. Absolutely love the fact that Pretty Deadly, that Hank and Tank look that good. And, you know, they basically tell him, if you want to be stars, you need to look like a star. And then we get a little side action of No Quarter Catch crew say they're going to get their ass kicked as they go out, and they pretty much just rip the tops off and walk off. They were not happy. They were getting picked on a little bit. And then we got a small little promo from Shawn Spears, basically just talking about his North American title match with Ricky Saints a little bit later on in the evening. Basically just how he was going to retain and make Ricky's life quite difficult. Standard, you know, I've got a title match later, I'm going to kick your butt, I'm going to make sure it's not very easy, I'm going to embarrass you, and then, you know, we all know what it's like. We're all big fans of wrestling. We've seen how these promos go. I'm going to kick your butt. No, I'm going to kick your butt. But I'm going to kick your butt harder. No, I'm going to kick your butt harder. It's just one of them. Which takes us into our second match of the evening, which was Miles Bourne and Tavian Heights of No Quarter Catch Crew versus Hank and Tank. Now, I could sit here and tell you this was a great match and I wish it had gone on forever. In theory, actually, I was glad this one was the shortest match on the card, and my notes for this match pretty much cover my opinions of it. You started off with Miles Bourne and Hank at the start of the match, and the first sort of big thing that I spotted was basically it was a tag team trip into a crossface style hold. I mean, it was nice to watch. It was very smooth, very silky. You can see they probably practiced that one once or twice. It wasn't too bad. There was a few double teams around and about, but quite frankly, there wasn't really a lot of things to talk about with this match. It was basically, I think, them just trying to get some time in somewhere, or just feel like this match wasn't really long enough to probably qualify as a match. It wasn't a squash match. It was just short, really short. And I think they probably really could have used that time better elsewhere. But it was one of those. Hank threw Miles Bourne out of the ring. He quickly jumped back in with a drop kick. And it was very, very rushed. There was a change of tag to get Tavion Heights in. They basically worked off a few double team maneuvers, and at the end of it, the 1-2-3 went with No Quarter Catch Crew picking up what was probably one of the, I'm not going to say an easy win, but probably one of the fastest wins we've seen them have. And it's not purely for the fact that Hank and Tank were poor quality. They're not generally poor quality wrestlers. It's just, I don't think they were given particularly long. I think they were kind of like, you've got 7 minutes, boys, go and do something with it. I don't even think it was that, if I'm being honest with you. The entire episode of NXT this week was an hour and 14 minutes after edit. So it was definitely, this was the one thing on the card today that I feel didn't really make sense. But talking about making sense, though, we do get to see Trick Williams right now. So Trick Williams comes out to the ring. We're not getting a match from Trick Williams. We are getting a promo. He basically comes out and says, Oba, I called you out last week. I ain't heard shit. So, what's going on? Because let's not get it. And I wrote this through. He says, let's not get it twisted. You may be the champion, but Trick Williams is still the man, and he's been the man since he took it upon himself to get that NXT title back around his waist. He says, though, but all the success that he has had has come at a cost, and he is absolutely hated by everyone in the back because of how great and how much he's done for himself. And he kind of gets, he gets it. He'd be angry at someone if they were doing the same thing he'd be doing. We then get, well, I'd say interrupted. We get joined in the ring by Javon Evans. And he comes out basically and says, Trick Williams says, don't come out here interrupting me, dog. He knows he's upset. He was collateral damage, but it's stand and deliver season and the grown folks are talking. Trick Williams does not have a lot of good things to say about Javon Evans at the moment. Now, Javon Evans has kind of been puppy dogging him for the last few weeks. And just kind of like, I can learn from you, you can learn from me, this could be cool, we could do a thing. Trick Williams is basically like, look, dude, just because we look the same doesn't mean we are the same. Leave me alone. I've got bigger fish to fry. I'm NXT championship level. You don't have nothing going on right now, And but Javon Evans says, I understand you now. I understand what you've been saying, but I want to know something. When did you know it was your time? He said, when Trick Williams won the NXT championship, he was NXT's golden child. And Javon Evans, basically, he just wants to have the same treatment. The only difference is Javon Evans doesn't need to break out a shadow, and he's ready to fight right now. And Trick Williams says that he's in his shadow now, and he knows nothing about being a champion. Well, Javon Evans really hasn't had too much experience with holding titles that we have seen within the finishers and factions period of NXT. So basically, the Netflix era. I did not watch a lot of NXT, if any NXT, before the Netflix era. Actually, I think the last lot of NXT I watched, Enzo Amore and Big Cass was still in NXT. So that was definitely a little while ago. Javon Evans calls Trick Williams basically Carmelo Hayes. He's like, dude, what you're saying to me now is what you're saying now is what Carmelo Hayes said a year ago. And since, people want to talk about things Javon Evans has done that no one else has done, there is only one thing he could mention. And he says, and he claims, and he's the only person to drop Obafemi. So, that's a pretty big statement to put out there. We know it's true because he wouldn't have said it otherwise. But the only person to get one over on the NXT champion, which we do get to see as his name is mentioned. Obafemi is starting to turn into NXT's version of Joe Hendry. You say his name, he appears. And he comes down to the ring and says Javon Evans should say that nonsense to his face. And he goes, congrats, you dropped the ruler. It was a lucky shot, and trust me, it won't happen again. And Javon Evans is saying, look, I only needed one more second to change history. And if he'd have changed history and beaten Obafemi, Obafemi wouldn't have beat Trick Williams for the title because Javon Evans would have had it. And, when you look at it that way and think, well, that's a weird series of events. Obafemi wouldn't have beaten Trick Williams for that title because Javon Evans would have had it. That could have been an interesting scenario. But, the time is there, and at Stand and Deliver, it's going to be the time of Obafemi, apparently. Obafemi's been great with this championship. He's had some phenomenal matches. His stuff with Moose, so he's not exactly been a slack champion with that title belt. He's kept hold of it, and he's kept hold of it really, really well. So Trick Williams says at Stand and Deliver, the NX title will be Obafemi and Trick Williams, at which point Javon Evans starts getting a little bit like, you can't do that without me. And Obafemi stops Javon Evans and says Trick Williams needs to stop talking, otherwise he'd be if Trick Williams he needs to stop talking because he'd be champ already. If he could act with his fists the way he runs his mouth, he'd still be champion, But we then get to see our glorious NXT general manager, Ava, come to the ring. Well, she comes out onto the ramp anyway, and she says, look, I've seen this before, and there is only one way it's going to end. So it's stand and deliver. Obafemi's going to defend his title against Trick Williams. And Javon Evans. We are going a triple threat in the main event of Stand and Deliver. Because let's face it, this has got to be the main event. Is there any other match that has been set up for Stand and Deliver so far that deserves to be main event material over Obafemi versus Trick Williams versus Javon Evans for the NXT title? Not only is that got to be main event, I'm going to call it now that that's going to be the match of the night when we see Stand and Deliver go off. So after we have Ava explain what is going on, Trick Williams punches Javon Evans, and Obafemi goes off on Trick Williams and basically tosses him out the ring. At which point, we get to see our four masked amigos again. Dark State come out and basically run down to the ring and give Obafemi and Javon Evans a bit of an ass kicking. Now, they've got this four-man double team type move they do, which is basically like the power bomb the Shield used to use, but instead of slamming a guy on the floor, they throw him halfway across the ring, and it works really well. It's kind of like an overpowered 3D, but without the ending, so to speak. It's like a diamond cutter ending. It's not quite that way at the moment. They just hoist him up and fling him. It's like a cannonball. I'd love to see them do it to Rey Mysterio, just to see how far he'd fly. But I digress. That's, they give him a bit of an ass kicking. Notice to start off with that they only go for Obafemi and Javon Evans. Bearing in mind, Trick Williams is out there too, and don't worry, Trick Williams gets what he deserves. He gets so we see him stood in the middle of the ring at one point with all four members of Dark State stood around him. Now I'm sat there thinking, are we about to find out that Dark State, is being run by Trick Williams? Oh, no. They beat the brakes off Trick Williams. They absolutely destroyed him. I mean, it don't take a lot, to be fair. I'm not saying the guy is not very good. I'm just saying they're four big animals. And Trick Williams, he's big, but he's not that big. He's not linebacker big. He's not football big. Even if you look at the fact you got linebacker and defensive lineman, these guys, they big fellas. Trick Williams not that big. Or not as big as them, anyway. Now, our next little section takes us into the medical tent as we see Chase U. There's Andre Chase from Chase U in the medical, basically finding out that after his match with Ethan Page last week, he's got cracked ribs. And the doctor's asking him, have you got anyone to take you home? And he's like, no, it's all right. I got this. And then the Chase U students come in from the side, which was I can't remember the guy's names now. Bear with me a second, and I will find out for you. Yeah, I don't think they were actually members of Chase U. They were just fans of Chase U. And they're fans whose name I can't quite remember off the top of my head. And I definitely didn't make a note of it because it didn't show it on the screen. So basically they turn around and say, it's cool, we'll take him home. And they leave just out the side door of medical as we go into the back underground section of the arena, where we see Jada Parker and Jordan Grace fighting again. Like, these guys absolutely going tongue and nail at it. Not only, did they? It was set off in the rings at the start of the show where something was gonna explode. It just happened that Jordan Grace and Jada Parker decided they could not wait to get at it to see who they feel should be facing Stephanie Baker for the NXT Women's title in Las Vegas. I mean, let's be honest. Jordan Grace versus Jada Parker in a no DQ. Who's winning? My money's on Jordan Grace every time, right? I don't know why. I think it's just because she's the biggest, like the bigger person now. I think she's, but yeah, my money would be on Jordan Grace in that one. Why don't you chuck us an email if your opinions on that one are different? It's finishesandfactions@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter, or X as it is more commonly known. It's Fin and Fan Pod. That's the Finishers and Factions podcast Twitter. You'll feel free to tweet us or drop us a message anytime you want, and one of us, either myself or Adam, will get back to you ASAP. We then see a little bit from Fraxium backstage saying to Hank and Tank about the fact that yes, they've lost their way, but look, don't embarrass yourselves. It will come. And while they're having a conversation, we get two gentlemen by the name of Brad Taylor and Ricky Smokes come in. So apparently these gentlemen are part of a tag team called Swipe Right in WWE Evolve. Now, I haven't watched any of Evolve. We've said this before, but we watch so much wrestling throughout the week. And clips, conversations, this podcast. I think the only time me and Adam actually talk now is it's either have you seen such and such, depending on the program, or do you want to play some COD? Outside of the conversations we have within this podcast, it's pretty much how far we get. COD? Yeah, go on, mate. And then it's just 2 hours of, well, not silence, but just us playing COD and being douches. But they came in and say that they quite look up to Fraxium, and they want a match. Purely just to see where their weaknesses are, and, who doesn't want a match against your idols? At which point Nathan Fraser says, yeah, sure, go for it. We'll do that. So Brad Taylor and Ricky Smokes from Swipe Right at some point are going to get a match with Fraxium, which is Axiom and Nathan Fraser. I mean, that's kind of cool, I suppose. If we've basically got 4 weekly programs from WWE now, with it being Raw, NXT, SmackDown, and Evolve, there could be some interesting stuff floating around. But talking about interesting stuff, let's move on to our next match. This would be the second of the Women's North American Tournament qualifiers. And as we found out earlier, we are getting a match between Roxanne Perez and Kalani Jordan. Now, on paper, this has got poor quality match written all over it, in my opinion, because on paper, Roxanne Perez should walk out of this one pretty quickly as the winner. I feel, considering the experience Roxanne Perez has had in NXT and the stuff that she's done on the main roster. Obviously, she featured in the Elimination Chamber. She's been in the Royal Rumble. We've seen her on episodes of Raw and SmackDown when she was running around chasing Bayley for a little while. And now we see her go into this match for basically a qualifying session to get into the Women's North American title match at Stand and Deliver, which I think personally could be actually a really good match. I'm going to look forward to it. But apart from Zarya, who we know is already qualified from the first match, who else are we going to find? Well, let's crack into this one and see if it's Roxanne Perez or Kalani Jordan that is going to be in the 6-woman ladder match in Las Vegas. So it starts off pretty evenly. There's not a lot of stuff going on. It's all just, like I said, feeling out weight, just getting themselves sort of like warm, flexible, kind of going, right, sweet, we've got this sorted. We are informed while this is going on that we've heard from a lot of different people about different things within the NXT universe. You know, whether it be the North American title vacation, whether it's been to do with, you know, the families, the Dark State, you know, so the Culling and the D'Angelos, that's what I mean by the families there. We've not heard from one person in a couple of weeks. So, at NXT's last pay per view, which I believe was only a few weeks ago, just trying to find where it was. Anyway, and like I said, at NXT's last pay per view a few weeks ago, there was a title versus title match at, I want to say it was a Roadblock. And this was basically Julia versus Stephanie Vaquer to find out who was the best woman in the women's division. And these women had one hell of a match. And it was an incredible match. And it basically finished with Stephanie Vaquer walking out of Madison Square Gardens with both titles. She defended them both last week, and she's obviously dropped the North American one this week. So, but we still haven't heard from Julia. So we don't actually know what's going on there, why the title was dropped, if there was a specific reason why Stephanie Baker was given it, or what is going on. Now, I'm guessing, and like I said, this is purely a guess, I think there was possibly an injury somewhere they just don't want to comment on. Or I can't see them, you know, not wanting to use Julia. She's a fantastic talent. There might be some family issues, I'm guessing. I'm not 100% sure. I'm personally going to go with the injury, which is somewhere I thought Kalani Jordan was going to go, because at one point Roxanne Perez was doing some really interesting stuff to Kalani Jordan's arm, which finished with her basically stomping on her arm as it was laying on the turnbuckle that holds the ropes onto the ring posts, while she was sat in the corner with her arm through the rope. Roxanne Perez jumped on it to the apron, and it looked like she'd done some. That hurt. There was definitely a hyperextension of the elbow. It was very, very like she's going to the two arms, the forearm, the hand off the apron, and we know those rings are definitely pretty sturdy, and there is no way they are going to break anytime soon, especially not with an arm. Anyway, we had a few little bits go up and away, a few more stomps on the arm. Roxanne Perez really did just keep going back to that arm whenever she had an opportunity. But it wasn't just the arm that she was working on. We got suplexes multiple times from Roxanne Perez and Kalani Jordan. But Kalani Jordan wasn't there just to be, she wasn't just there to take part. She wanted to take over. And eventually that's what she does. She got a 2 count off. I've written it down as a sit-down facebuster. But I'm pretty sure someone mentioned it was a face-down. It was a sit-down DDT. So I'm not entirely sure where we're going to go from. I think facebuster sounds better, because she basically just, as she split leg, it was like she had a split leg bulldog, so to speak. Like she bulldogged Roxanne Perez through her own split legs as she sat, hit the floor in a seating position onto the mat. It was interesting. I really enjoyed it. Kalani Jordan missed one of a kind a few times, and there was a bit of a nasty kick from Roxanne Perez, which looked like it hit Kalani Jordan in the back of the neck, and she did make the most of that to try and get a 2 count. And then we've spoken recently about when Jimmy Uso slapped Gunther as the slap that was heard around the world. The slap that Roxanne Perez put on Kalani Jordan, very close to being as impressive. By decibels, it was still a phenomenal slap. And Kalani Jordan was not happy with that. That's a, the fuck did you just do to me? And she got up and she was swinging for the fences. She was not happy. Kalani Jordan, in that process, countered a pop rocks attempt and then ends up holding onto the top rope and using the, not the leverage she got from that, but the safety that she got from that, because the hold was broken, to hit a DDT on Roxanne Perez. And finally, Kalani Jordan managed to hit that one of a kind for the 3 count, which means that Roxanne Perez might be going to Las Vegas, but she's not going into the 6-women ladder match for the North American title. That is so far Zarya and Kalani Jordan. So yeah, I mean, so far we've had 2 matches for this title, and for this title qualifier, and they've both been pretty spot on. I couldn't think of one that I've watched so far where I've been a little bit like, you know, it was this and it was that. I still thoroughly enjoyed the match, and I'm not going to take anything away from the guys that are in it. It was a brilliant match. I personally think though that it wasn't long enough. And that is the problem I'm going to have with this match. I think that if they'd have taken out the little section they had earlier with the match we said that didn't need to be there between Hank and Tank and No Quarter Catch Crew, yeah, I'm pretty sure that that match could have had a little bit of extra time and given us a little bit more from Kalani Jordan. So we then go, we go backstage again, and yet again we are seeing our general manager Ava. Ava has had a very, very busy day today, sorting out multiple issues with multiple aspects of her NXT division. And to be fair, so far she's pretty much got everything down to a T. But she's in there with the general manager of WWE Evolve, which like I said, I haven't watched, so I am not sure who their general manager is. So I think it's going to be a case that I'm going to have to go back and do a little bit more research for this one, because I'm really not sure where it could go from this one. Stevie Turner is the on-screen general manager for WWE Evolve. That was announced on March 26th. She made history being the first general manager of Evolve. And she made her way onto NXT to have a conversation with Ava about Swipe Right. And Ava says, look, at the moment, I don't really have time for Swipe Right. My focus is Dark State. She says, that next week we are getting a 6-man tag match, at which point we find out that 3 members of the 4 of Dark State will be facing Obafemi, Trick Williams, and Javon Evans. So the main event of Stand and Deliver are having to team up next week to stop Dark State in their first official match on WWE NXT. So tune in for that one, because I think that could be phenomenal. Purely, I just want to see what Dark State can do, because we've seen them all run in, we've seen them beat people up and throw them away. For me, it's time to see what they are capable of and what their stamina is like, and whether they're at a position where they can have a full match. We then go backstage and see Sarah Schreiber talking to Ricky Saints about his match with Shawn Spears, which is our NXT main event. This is for the North American title, and that basically Ricky Saints just says that he's taken this title off Shawn Spears tonight, and that's the end of that. But well, we'll find out in the main event in a few moments, because we have another little section to go through first. Well, actually, we've got 2. The first one is where we see Zarya and Soruka backstage, and Zarya is telling Soruka that basically, when it comes to Stand and Deliver, I'd like you to be at ringside with me. And I think that's a fair shout. You know, it's a 6-woman ladder match. This is going to be an interesting match, and she just wants her tag buddy there to make sure that no one fucks her too hard. You know. At which point, Kalani Jordan comes in from the side, and she's like, "Oh my god, did you see my match? How amazing was that? I beat the Prodigy. I'm off to this match at Stand and Deliver." And you know, and basically Saruka says, well, let's face it, it's going to be one of us two that wins that match. At which point Zarya looks at Saruka and like, the fuck? And we find out from then that Saruka has her qualifying match next week. We just do not know who her qualifying match is against. Sure, we'll find that out next week, though, as we see her match and one more in the qualifier for the Stand and Deliver ladder match. We do get another little section from Dark State, and they were basically talking about the fact they've got a match next week, and they're pretty happy about the fact they've got a match next week, and how the D'Angelo family were too concerned about finding out who they were, and all they really need us to know is they're here to take belts. They want gold, which, who can blame him, really? Who gets into professional wrestling and goes, I don't want to hold a title. Fuck that noise. I just want to sell more merch. You know, it's going to be one of those, and we're going to get there eventually. But getting there is one thing we have done. And you guys are not going to have to hear my voice for much longer in this episode, because we have got to our main event of the evening. This was Ricky Saints and Shawn Spears, who was accompanied to the ring by the Culling for their North American title match, which, one hell of a match, and one that I actually personally really enjoyed watching. Right, so this match was actually really good. It started off with the bell rings and Shawn Spears is like, nope, fuck this, I am out of here, and disappears out under the bottom rope down towards the announce table, at which point Ricky Saints is like, I don't think so, my good sir. Come back here. And flies over the top rope to get him. And goes straight after him, to be fair. Gives him a few slaps around, a few punches. And then ends up pulling off. I mean, this isn't something we see Damian Priest use this quite a lot. But Ricky Saints hit a rather naughty old school off the barricade on to Shawn Spears, who then climbs back up. We don't know what happens from here because we went to a commercial break. And when we came back from the commercial break, Ricky Saints wasn't on the barricade. He was on his hands and knees in the middle of the ring, and Shawn Spears was basically just attacking him from behind here. I've got, at one point, Shawn Spears goes to lariat Ricky Saints into the corner, and Ricky bounces off the 3 padded turnbuckles and kind of just lands on the floor about 2 feet away, and he's hurting. I don't know how hard he hit that, but he hit it pretty goddamn hard. And Shawn Spears jumps straight on top of him and starts punching him in the face. I mean, as would anyone in this situation, I suppose. It is one of those, like, you can go or you can't go. And Shawn Spears decided that at this particular time, he was going for it. At one point, again, following on from this, Shawn Spears throws Ricky on the floor, goes up to the top rope, and Ricky Saints basically just gets up and goes running at him and swings right at him. To the point where Ricky Saints actually takes a little bit more control about what is going on, climbs back up to the top rope with Shawn Spears up there, and hits what I can describe only as move of the evening. This was basically a jackhammer suplex. So he went from Shawn Spears sitting on the ring post and Ricky Saints standing on rope 3. So we've got like a suplex happening, but as Ricky Saints lifts him up and over, he manages to turn himself so as he lands it, it basically is a jackhammer. And it was incredible. Goldberg himself would have been impressed with this jackhammer that Ricky Saints managed to pull out of absolutely nowhere, by the way. There is no way on earth I'd have looked at that and gone, that's what Ricky Saints is going to do. Nope. No, 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 no way. Which is pretty much this entire match. I did not look at any of the spots in this match and go, he's going to do this. Because they didn't. You could not read this one. From a note-taking perspective, this match was a real pain in the butt because I couldn't type fast enough. And if I pause it to type and unpause it, and yeah, it messes with me. And I end up forgetting that I'm doing either the watching or the typing. And I just end up just typing a huge amount, or I don't type anything at all. Which, again, is not particularly happy. We do get some pretty phenomenal moves, though. Shawn Spears countered a tornado DDT and then ate a spine buster for the privilege of it. Ricky Saints literally was all over Shawn Spears for a majority of this match. And then, so at one point, Shawn Spears decides, you know what, I've had enough. I need a breather. I'm just going to nip to the outside of the ring. Again, Ricky Saints is like, I do not think so. Come here, por favor. Jumped over to find him and then hit a tornado DDT using the steps, the apron, and the floor. The concrete floor of the Performance Center, and Shawn Spears' head made some pretty sweet connections this evening. The end of the match, though, is not too far away. And it looks like it is going to go the way of Shawn Spears and the culling when Nico starts trying to distract the ref. Izzy Dame throws Shawn Spears his title, and Shawn Spears whacks Ricky Saints right between his two eyes with that North American title. And still, as the hand went down for 2 on that 2 count, Ricky popped his shoulder as though to say, you are not going to get me that easy. And in normal fashion, he who laughs last laughs longest, because Ricky Saints, hit a C4 on Shawn Spears. We then see him take Jensen out with a spear. And Brooks as well. And then he spears Shawn Spears again and hits the Rochambeau for the 3 count, making Ricky Saints not only our new North American champion, with 2 weeks left to go into Stand and Deliver, he beat Ethan Page's record of the fastest signing, or the fastest debut to title by 7 days. And speak of the devil, again, when you say his name, and he generally has a tendency to appear, Ethan Page, all ego Ethan Page, decided that he was not going to let this stand, and he comes running out and completely drops Ricky Saints, who, by the way, has just had a pretty stonking match against Shawn Spears. He's fucked. And Ethan Page decides that he's having a pop at him. Ethan comes out, steals the smile of Ricky Saints, lifts up Ricky Saints' newly awarded North American Championship, and we basically take the curtain call of this week's NXT to see Ethan Page holding up Ricky's title above Ricky's cold ass body lying on the floor. Which, Jesus, man. We've had some matches today. Unfortunately, though, my notes have finished for this one, and we are coming to an end of another episode of Finishers and Factions. This episode, when it uploads, will be episode number 48. For Finishers and Factions, which means by the time next week's Monday Night Raw comes round, we will be celebrating the 50th episode of Finishes and Factions. So I will see you in the next episode, which is Finishes and Factions does SmackDown. And hopefully Adam will be back with us for that one, because you don't want 2 hours of me talking to myself. Trust me. But I will thank you all for listening. Thank you all for your continued support. And without further ado, we're going to end here. But one last thing before I do go. Yeet! Peace out, guys. Have a great weekend.